thing. I wanted somebody to hold me accountable.
I know what I know. You can't teach me. I've been doing this 20 years.
I had an alcohol issue.
How does it make you accountable?
Personal and business shouldn't mix together.
Your thoughts are not your thoughts.
What do you want to accomplish in your life?
Okay, this is my story. First time I share it,
We're for profit for a purpose.
I don't want to be like my dad.
You're capable of so much more. You're.
It pisses me off.
Why is that important, Dmitry?
Bram, you recently rebranded your company to Roofing 101.
Mm-hmm.
How much did you spend on the rebranding?
It was probably between the rebranding, like the logos, building the brand book, the consulting hours, the interviews, building the customer journey. I think it's probably close to $30,000.
I could probably do it for like 28. Why would anyone spend $30,000 on rebranding? I mean, Desert Companies was good company, last name, legacy. Yeah. Why did you decide to do it? And what's the results? Would you recommend anyone to rebrand?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the problem is, my last name. Okay, my last name is Dessert, spelled like dessert, and so. I kept on getting emails and phone calls for like wedding cakes and shit like that. So
it was misleading.
Yes, it was very misleading. People had no idea what we did. So, I mean, you think about it, you take Desert Companies and you put it into Google, what are you going to get? Well, of course, you're going to get pie shops, you're going to get people that do wedding cakes, stuff like that.
Wow.
So I would get all kinds of weird.
Perception was not there.
Yeah, so there was a misalignment and market confusion, and it was great for the town where I was. But if you're going to expand and grow,
was it Kansas?
Yeah, it was in Kansas. So I grew up in Leavenworth, Kansas, and it was great for that town. Everybody knew who I was.
How big of the company did you run at that time when you decided to rebrand? Because I remember you running Desert Companies, and I remember starting with the Roofing 101.
We were about $5 million.
Nice.
Yeah, $5 million.
I mean, guys, I want you to think about it. You're around $5 million company. Mm-hmm. You're top 5% in your industry. Mm-hmm. For the most people, you made it, and you're like, no, I can do better.
Yeah, that was the mindset, and so, I remember it was in 2016. We had a great year, and we were continuing to grow and develop. And my wife and I made the decision, we're going to move. We made the decision together. I still remember the phone call. She was on a retreat in San Diego, and I could just hear the joy in her voice. And we were on the phone, and I'm like, you know what? Let's move. Let's move to San Diego. And she's like, are you serious? And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And so I was so afraid.
I remember that time.
Yeah, dude, and I was.
We already were friends, and we were talking. Love it.
Yeah, and I remember thinking to myself, man, if I don't start telling people we're moving, we're gonna back out. And so I was like a week later, we're telling her mom, a week after that, I'm telling my parents, and then a week after that, we had a company meeting, I made the announcement, had no plans in place whatsoever. We just said, we're gonna move, and we got 9 months to figure it out.
Wow. And I remember that, and this is actually a great example of how Facebook friends become real life friends. Yeah. I remember Graham called me or texted me, he's like, Dmitry, I love your story. You asked me, and how he approached me was, actually, in my opinion, Putin. He's like, what do you think about Putin and Medvedev and Russian politics? And it's like, I'm like, okay, let's talk about that. But I remember that, like, I like your take, I like immigration story, and that's how we started talking, and then we started meeting each other, different conferences. We have the same mentors essentially. I'll get back to your story, to your move a little bit later. I have a personal section here. Yeah. But so rebranding was, I want to talk a little bit about rebranding. Yeah. So $30,000. Yeah. You moved to California. Now you have brand new business, essentially, brand new name, and you running your company remotely. How was that?
It was good. We had, it was challenging at first because, I'm like, man, how am I going to do this? Well, I grew up in the franchising world, and so you develop systems and processes, and you put people in place to run those systems and processes.
How many years have been in business at that time?
At that time, so I started in 08, 09, so I think at that time it would have been Less than 10 years, so 8 years.
Wow.
Yeah, 7-8 years at the time.
Now you're already 4 years, essentially growing from California.
Yeah.
Living your dream life.
Yeah.
Your business runs itself. I mean, you're
Yeah.
still involved. Let's talk about partnerships. You have partners now.
I have a partner now. Yeah, partners, multiple.
Multiple partners.
Yeah.
Tell me, how do you find partners?
Yeah.
How hard it is to find a good partner?
It's hard, and you know, sometimes it's a lifetime venture. I feel like for me to grow and for the company to grow, I put the mission and the vision of the organization before my own personal needs.
Okay.
Because yes, I can run the organization, and you know, I can do $5, $6, $7, $8, $9 million a year, no problem, and make a great living. But the problem was the mission of the organization was bigger than that, and so I needed help. It wasn't something I could do by myself. And so the people that are now partners are people that I've met through the years. So Takuya, who is the CEO, so we named him CEO at the beginning of the year. I met Takuya in 2006 at a company we used to work for.
I see.
So he was...
so you recruit people from your network, essentially?
Yeah, so through my network, people that I've known for a long time. And then Austin, who is our COO, I don't know if you remember at the Rodney Webb conference when they did the pitch off. This is in 2016 or 17. I don't remember the exact year. But our company went to the finals, and we were head to head with Austin's company.
I see. I
and
remember
so
that.
we won, and so it's crazy because now, you know, 4 years later, 5 years later, we're now business partners.
Wow.
You know, and
how I want you to think about is how amazing is that? Like literally, you're competing. You're like, and one of the things that Rodney Webb, he always will tell you, no recruiting. You get recruited. You try to recruit someone at the conference, you get kicked out.
Yeah, no recruiting whatsoever.
And you broke that rule.
Well, we didn't break it. I didn't break it. You know, like this happened. You know, 4 years later. So like I didn't.
I'm tell Rodney about it.
He'll slap my hand.
How do you make sure that your partner works as hard as you do?
That's a good question. You know, there's an element of trust. You know, there's an element of trust, and you know, you don't want to partner with people you don't trust. And part of that is, you know, there's 3 components of it. And number one, are they competent? Do they know what they're doing? You know, and so every single one of my partners is competent. You know, do they have the same common goals? You know, so that was a very big thing. You know, you have to share the same vision. You have to share the same mission. You have to want to accomplish the same things. If you don't want to accomplish the same things, there's a misalignment and it's not going to work. And then the next one is character, you know, the values of the individual. So we all have, you know, the same common values, and we all align in that sense. So it works.
Love it. You moved from Kansas City to California. I've been in Kansas City. I've been in your office. Literally nothing there. Huge. I remember I couldn't find like a restaurant like to eat like decent.
Yeah.
Like in a hotel, it was just, I mean, whatever.
Yeah.
But in San Diego, huge change, and essentially you started running your company remotely, and you rebranded.
Yeah.
Like I want to zero in a little bit on that. How do you go from all of this to like, I mean, essentially that's the dream of most entrepreneurs out there. Build a business like McDonald's that just grows and you don't have to be there. Yeah. So it's a loaded question, and there's a lot that needs to take place. So you need a management team, you need systems and processes, you need people that you can trust. You know, I had all of that, and it took a while to build it, but we put it together. You know, I had a management team in place that ran the business, and they did a really good job. You know. You know, remotely it wasn't easy. Probably the biggest, what it forced me to do is it physically forced me to let go, because part of the biggest problem with business owners is letting go and putting people in place and letting them do what they're hired to do. You know. True delegation.
True delegation, right. True delegation.
Trust.
And you know, there's a way that you can delegate and really mess things up. Like you can passive delegate. And so I'm guilty of passive delegating, where it's just like, well, here you go. I'm assuming that you got it. And when you assume, that's where you make an ass out of yourself. You assume, you know. So You have to make sure that that person is competent and they have clear direction on what they're to do, what their roles and responsibilities are, how they're being compensated. And we put all that in place, and it worked out well. And then once I got San Diego started, I knew at that point I needed a coach. This wasn't something I could do on my own. I wanted somebody to hold me accountable. Could I do it by myself? Yes, but I wanted the extra piece of accountability, and that's where I hired Takuya to actually, who's my now business partner, to be my coach along the way. We worked together for 2 to 3 months, and after 2 to 3 months, our values.
How does he make you accountable?
Well, we do weekly phone calls, one-on-one phone calls. We have our own terms and our own, the way we do things, but sure. You set up a business plan. In that business plan, you break up all these metrics. You have monthly metrics, weekly metrics, quarterly metrics, so all the metrics are broken out. Then you identify the key activities that need to happen to make all those metrics happen, right? And then it's pretty simple. You schedule those activities. And then as long as you're working and doing those activities, right, then the goals get hit. The cool thing is that what I liked about and what I like about business is that challenges come in the way, problems come along, and problem solving is the one thing I don't like to do alone. I like to have people around me problem solving, and so that was the key benefit of having Takuya and I talking once a week, is he would help me problem solve, key issues that would come up. And so now one of the things that we've implemented in our company is it's what we call L10 meetings. So there's this book called Traction, which I'd recommend anybody out there.
EOS.
Yeah, the EOS Entrepreneur Operating System. We started that at the beginning of last year.
So many businesses doing it. Every single successful business I interviewed in the last, 2 years, they've done it. Like we've done it. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's great. So now
the right people in the right seats.
Yeah, right people in the right seats. Everybody's rowing in the right direction.
Guys, I'm gonna put a link to the book in the description below. Yep. It's amazing, worth it.
Yep. So that's how it all started. And we can go back to the branding part. I spent a lot of money on it, but it was like, I had to ask this key question: do I want to build? I don't want to stay with the same poor brand that I have. I don't want to build something good. I don't even want something great. I want something exceptional. Right? And so if I'm going to build something exceptional, I'm going to hire the right person to help me build this, right? And so I hired a consultant out of San Francisco. The guy's named Edward Lehman with Growers and Nomads. Does a phenomenal job. He's worked with some of the top brands. He's worked with Nike and Gap and some other home improvement, sure. Franchise systems. I was familiar with Edward. I brought him in. Some of our first conversations were around the belief structure that I had. Because what you have to understand is what you believe is how you're going to lead. And that's ultimately going to turn into the customer experience. It's going to turn into how the employees do their job, which then turns into, the customer experience. So we spent a lot of time identifying what the belief structure of the organization was, which ultimately was mine, and also some of the key employees,
The thing is, you moved away. My question is, would you agree that your business could be a little bit more profitable if you would be present? Because every time we walk away, we know it's going to rain, problem's going to come, and your profit margin probably not going to be as high, because when you're present, it's a tighter ship.
Yeah.
So, I'm pretty sure McDonald's, with the owners will be a little bit on point, but then how much would you say in percentage-wise you lose when you're not present? I mean, I know even for my business, I can make more money, I can be more profitable if I'm there every day, but now I go from working 10 hours a week to 60 hours a week, so it comes with a price, right? What's your answer to that?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that's a good point. For us, we actually were in the middle of, the Rodney Webb system. So, our profitability stayed the same. So gross margin stayed the same. I'm sure it dropped a tad because I wasn't there. So I would say from a material standpoint, our material cost probably went up, a point or two. Just based on ordering, because I used to do a lot of the ordering, and I'm
You're micromanager.
I micromanage that.
Why we pay more here?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
you're walking in the business and you find money on the floor. Why that is on the garbage?
Dude, so I spent an hour with the guy who does all of our ordering now, and I was just walking through probably about 3 or 4 previous orders, and I'm like, this, and just by having that 1 hour conversation, we're saving a point. You know, like it's such an important conversation. So that's something that I know was that hurt us, but we regain points through tighter supplements and then also through selling upgrades. So we don't give away. It's the equivalent of restaurants giving away bacon on a burger or giving away avocado on a burger. They charge for bacon, they charge for avocado. So in an insurance claim, why are you not charging for IR shingles? Why are you not charging for ice and water shield? Why are you not charging for the platinum warranty, right? So we charge for that.
So, but what you get, so you're losing a point or two here, but you live in San Diego now, right? That's what a lot of guys don't understand. People ask me all the time, like I understand, I'm in the same position, a $4 million company, but I do roofing insights. This is my joy. This is my California. I travel, I meet new people, and people like, do you realize that you can be running like $10 million company? I'm like, yes, but it comes with the price, with the headaches, and you're there, you're burning yourself up, you're not living your dream. Would you agree with that? Like, I mean, what else drove you to California? I want to talk about a little bit personal.
Yeah.
Like, what made you that?
Well, it was time for a life change, man, quite frankly. We lived in the Midwest. When we first got married, we knew we weren't going to live in the Midwest forever. And at some point we were going to move. And, it got to that point. It was time to go. And if we didn't leave now, we felt like we weren't going to leave. We were too comfortable. The business was doing well. We were in a neighborhood we loved. My sister lived 2 doors down. My parents lived around the corner. We went to a gym. I'd love, how hard it is to find a good CrossFit box. We loved, the gym that we were in and the culture we were around, but we felt too comfortable, and I felt like there was more out there. And quite frankly, and I'll bring it up. I had an alcohol issue. I had for years. I had an alcohol problem.
How long have you been sober?
I've been sober for 5.5 years.
Wow.
Yeah, 5.5 years.
I want to meet Graham, the bad boy. How bad was
All right,
it?
So this is how bad it was, and I don't mind talking about this.
Sure.
So I would go to the gym, and this is how I knew I had a problem. Okay, so I would go to the gym. I'd work out. Immediately leaving the gym, I'd drive through the liquor store. Okay, I'd get one of these little bottles of like Jack or Jim Beam, right? And then I'd go to the gas station, get a 32-ounce bottle of soda or styrofoam cup, right? Drive home, and on my way home, as soon as I pull into the neighborhood, I'm pouring that bottle into the styrofoam cup, and then as soon as I park my truck, I'm downing it. So I down it before I go in the house, right?
Wow.
And so I wouldn't go. It got to a point where
after you worked out.
After I work out.
Was it your reward or what was it?
Like I don't know. It was just a messed up mentality,
Wow.
It was a messed up mentality, and quite frankly, it was very, very. I was very broken. And it's not something I'm really proud of.
How did you get out of it? The thing is, and you were successful at the time?
Yeah.
Stressful at work, or what else was
No, not stressful. It wasn't stressful. Business was good. It wasn't stressful. My marriage was good on the outside, and quite frankly, it was a train wreck. Looking back at it.
Sure.
And what changed, this is what happened. I think my wife went out one night, and I passed out. I was in charge of the kids, right? And so it's like I think 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock or midnight or something like that, and I wake up to a glass of water being poured on my face, and that's my wife.
Wow. And
she's like, if you don't change, I'm taking the kids and I'm out of here.
And you were drunk?
I was drunk, passed out on the floor.
Wow.
Yep. And I had to make a choice. She took the kids, walked out, went to her mother's for the day, and I was sitting there in the house alone, like hungover, like, what am I gonna do? Like, here's alcohol, here's my family. Alcohol, family, And I know this road. The alcohol road. You go down that road, it's just like you go to those AA meetings, and in those meetings, there's all kinds of stories. I lost my family, lost my business, I'm broke, I live on the streets. I mean, and you know what? And I looked at that, and I'm like, that is not me. That's not me. But it was so hard. It felt like I was going to cut off, like, my wife gave me the ultimatum, and she's like forcing me to cut off my arm. That's what, what I could hear in my head, like, So I just made the decision, my wife and my family is more important, and I'll do whatever it takes. And so that was January 24th, 2015, I believe, yeah. And since then, it was like I never looked back. And I went through a period of what you would call recovery, I guess, where it's like
detox.
I had to change, detox. I had to change my friends. I had to change my habits.
You had like drinking friends?
People you'd see at bars, and, like I just wouldn't respond to messages. Things like, I'm going to parties, like St. Patrick's Day was like 2 months later.
Sure.
So I would go to a party, but I'm like drinking coffee, and St.
How
Patrick's
hard was
Day.
that? Give some advice to people who maybe quit, but they still have their circles.
Yeah. You, listen, man, people are going to try and pull you back. It's like the lobster effect. You ever hear of the lobster effect, where it's like, you have lobsters in the bucket, and then one lobster tries to get out, and then they all just try and grab them. It's like, look, you don't belong in the bucket. Get out of the bucket. And anybody that tries to pull you back in the bucket should not be in your circle. There is a better life outside of, drinking and alcohol and all of that. Like, especially if it's a problem,
I see so many guys. It's funny. I go to, like, sometimes for lunch, I go to several restaurants around me, and they're like restaurants. You sit down, and the reason I go there because fast food is you can't sit like with the computer and stuff. So I go there, and I see the same faces at the bar, and usually contractors.
Yeah.
And I rarely go. Like, I have Mexican place, and I would go there like once in 2 months. I come in, and there's like 2 contractors sitting at the bar. I'm sitting at the table, and I see the same 2 guys. I would go there like 5 times a year. And those 5 times a year, they're always there at lunchtime for like hours, just drinking during the day.
Yeah.
Such a common problem, but nobody thinks it's a problem. It's the day drinking, it's hiding from family and wives and employees maybe.
Yeah.
And I see it's an epidemic. I would call it that.
Yeah, I would definitely say addiction is a real thing. Addiction is a real problem. It's a real thing, and it doesn't just plague contractors. It plagues all humans. And there's all kinds of addictions. There's pornography addictions. There's alcohol addictions. There's drug addictions. There's believe it or not, there's exercise addiction. I mean, there's addictions for all kinds of stuff, right?
I made a video this morning about this, and I said, replace happiness with happiness. And exactly what I talked about. I talked about porn.
Yeah.
I talked about alcohol.
Yeah.
And I talked about money.
Yeah.
And my point was, if you're addicted to porn, replace it with different, like, that brings you happiness, but it's one happiness. It's never going to fulfill you. Invest in a relationship. Some guys don't know how to talk to a girl anymore.
Yeah, because what it does is it's a wall between any relationship that you would have, not just with a woman, but with, buddies, with your sons, your daughters, your mom, your dad, your sisters, your brothers. Because what it does is it will essentially, it's all fake, and so it portrays something that we're not, that, women will never be, And so now you have this expectation for how women should be or men should be and how they should act, and this is getting really personal and deep, but it's like, look, and that's not healthy, because then we go into relationships and we expect, women expect our men to act a certain way, and men expect women to perform a certain way, and that's just not realistic,
How do you rewire yourself? What tips would you give to someone who is addicted to something? Is it finding a mentor, talking to someone? Because people are afraid to talk about it.
Yeah, number one, you got to get help. don't be too proudful and prideful to get help.
Where do you look for help?
Find a therapist. Find someone who's certified and able to handle addictions. And, which I'm not, but I've gone through a lot of different addictions. And the best thing that I can tell you is take your thoughts captive. We have 12 to 60,000 thoughts a day. 80% of them are negative and 95% of them are repetitive. So just think about that for a second. 12 to 60,000 thoughts a day. So a couple things come to mind, and we have the greatest.
And your thoughts are not your thoughts. That's what you see. Your thoughts are not your thoughts. I'm telling you that much.
So we have, God gave us this amazing mind. It's the most amazing computer programming device ever created. The brain and the nervous system. It doesn't come with an owner's manual. You know what I'm saying? Yes. And so
well, it does. Nobody likes to read it.
Okay, got it. Okay, very good. So here's the thing. So you have that, and then you have this greatest computer, and then it's like there's all this negativity around. You have these negative thoughts, whether it's words that people have spoken over you, coaches, teachers, parents, brothers, sisters, kids at school, whatever, right? And then we agree with it, and when we agree with it, it stays with us, right? And so that's that negative, repetitive cycle that keeps on going on. And so how do you break that? Well, that's the big question, is how do you break it? Well, we could be here all day long talking about it, but it's super important for, people to move on. And part of the healing process with addiction is actually forgiving people that have, spoken over you, that have done you wrong in any way. And so the problem is, when you don't forgive those people, you're running around with all these anchors. And so you're being dragged down and dragged down and dragged down. And then your day just gets heavier and heavier and heavier. And whether you know it or not, subconsciously, that's what's going on. And so then what do? Well, you numb it with all kinds of addictions and all kinds of things that will keep you from, pursuing the truth, right? And a better life. And so the number one thing that you can do is take your thoughts captive, understand where the thought came from. If it's negative, trace it back to where it came from, right? And then it might be attached to some sort of trauma that happened in the past or some words that somebody spoke over you. Then you can forgive that person and move on. And then I'm telling you, when you do that, it's like freedom. And then now you're open. You're emotionally, socially, mentally, and all of that impacts who you are and how you operate on a daily basis. So, I've heard this before where personal and business shouldn't mix together. We're talking about work here, keep your personal stuff out. Well, look. You can't.
It's impossible.
You can't. It's impossible because what happens personally affects your business life, and what happens in business affects your personal life. So you intertwine them.
You have to find a way.
You have to find a way. And so if you're so transactional based and so worried about generating the lead, getting the sale, and producing and collecting money in your business, right? And you're so focused on transaction, you forget about relationship, and that's the part in the business that's really important.
Give advice to someone successful in our business, really successful, but he has drinks, maybe does not want to acknowledge the problem yet, but I see a lot of guys drink almost every day, and every meeting, they can't go in a meeting and not drink. Give advice to that person. For example, I had a problem with, not me personally, but I have a couple of reps for big billion-dollar companies.
Yeah.
And we would go to conferences and I tried to do business with them. And every single party or every single event, expo, conference, they're always drunk. You're trying to talk to them about what your company is, and they're never available. It's drinking. I mean, they have that reputation, and I feel like in our industry it's top down. You have billion-dollar companies. They'll spend $50,000 on a party, making all the roofers drunk. You come to them, hey, can you help me wrap my vehicle for $2,000? Nope, not in the budget. Like, you just wasted $50,000. So that is just like that. And now roofers, they see that.
Yeah.
So when we go to the conference, when we go to expos, that's what big boys do. Now we're here, now what we do. You know, you want to recruit someone, you take them out, wine and dine, and it's almost like a circle, and it becomes bigger problem, but it becomes a business. People say it often, you know, let's go for a couple drinks. Let's, you know, taking sales guys. Like now, like my big company took me out for a drinks. I felt good that night. Now I'm going to take my sales reps out. I'm going to buy taps. And to be honest with you, that's my problem. I remember I got DUI, and I'm not, like, I would never drink and drive, whatever.
Right.
But one night, and was not even planning. I came in, we were working in the mall. Okay, this is my story. First time I share it with anybody. So my guys were working a weekend in the mall. Yeah. Like we got a booth, paid for it, and I come in, it was Saturday night, empty. So I came in to help them to fold it out. I told my wife I'll be back in 2 hours. And my guys sitting in the bar, just having drinks. As a boss, I'm like, I have to pick up a tab. That's what boss do, right? Yeah. So I pick up a tab. Of course, I have 2 drinks with them. And they're my guys, 4 sales reps. You love them. They're supporting your lifestyle. Before you knew it, like, and it was Oktoberfest. I'm like, okay, so someone, you know, you have a couple drinks. Your wife is already sleeping. It's 10:30. Guys, like, let's go downtown. So let's go downtown. I have a few more drinks. Yeah. I'm drinking beer, feeling great, whatever. Next thing I know, come back to the office, and we still with the guys, you know, have a pack in the office, I guess. Someone have another case, so we have a few more drinks. Before you know it, I live 2 miles from my office. Yeah. Like, I didn't go, there's no strip clubs, there's no, like, dances, crazy nights. Me and my sales guys just getting to know each other, personal, driving home, get pulled over, for whatever reason. It wasn't even speeding, changed lane or something. I was trying to change the music on my phone. And stupid enough, of course, I got pulled over. Yeah. Ended up literally handcuffs. It was 2 years ago. I did not drink nothing for like 6 months. I'm like, you know, I'm going to prove to myself that this is not addiction. And prior to that, I was not like everyday drinker or anything. Yeah. I literally did it for my guys. The problem I see in the industry, that this becomes norm, that this is what you do with your sales guys. What advice would you give to someone who is just that culturally, or just have to do it because everybody else is doing it?
You're capable of so much more. You're capable of so much more. You know, you have an assignment on your life. You're here for a reason. Your DNA is so specific. Nobody else on the planet has your DNA. Your fingerprint. You're identified by your fingerprint. Nobody else in the entire planet has your fingerprint. You know, you look at how everything's been created.
So alcohol is not part of our DNA?
Dude, no, that's not what I'm getting at. But it's like, if you look at how everything's been created, it's so specific. And if it's so specific, you know, and your fingerprint is so unique, then you're here for a reason. And so, like, what are you waiting for? Why are you allowing, you know, if you have a problem, this is me speaking to someone that has a problem. Why are you allowing this become a problem?
I see.
You know, you have a calling on your life. You're not supposed to be doing this.
I want you to give advice to someone who doesn't have time for a gym. You're obviously a gym fanatic per se. I see a lot of guys, they just have this excuse. I work too much. I put 12, 14 hours a day, so I just don't have time. Yeah. What do you tell that person?
There is time. There's time. There's time, dude. Like, we all have 168. This is so cliche. So cliche. We all have 168 hours in a week. I was just posting about this today. Right. I've been doing the same workout every single day for 35 days now.
You're nuts.
235 days. And so I just figured out, it takes about an hour for me to do this workout, right? And so today, you know, it's like I had to figure out, now I want you guys to listen because this is important, okay? This is where it gets good. So we all have a full schedule. We're all busy. We all have priorities. You know, we have families, we have our business, you know, we have things outside of, you know, the business that we do, hobbies, whatever. So all these things that are important, right? every single Tuesday morning, I go to church and we do men's prayer. There's 100 dudes, we get together, we do prayer, okay? I do not miss that, right? And my Murph workout is a priority. I don't miss my Murph workout. I make it happen.
1 mile around, 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 squats, 1 mile around. Takes about an hour.
With a vest.
20 pounds.
20 pounds, yep. And so, I booked my flight. My flight leaves at 10:30. I'm here, and then I get home. I land around 11. So I'm like, I got to get this where I'm not going to get home to my house till probably about 11:45, midnight. So I have to do this in the morning. So we have our executive L10 meeting at 8 o'clock. I have men's prayer at 5:30. I have to get ready and get to the airport somewhere in there. And I got to get this Murph workout done. So when am I going to do it? Well, I woke up at 3:45, was out the door at 4 o'clock doing the Murph workout, got back to my house at 5, jumped in the shower, got my kid out of bed. We went to men's prayer. I got back home, got all my stuff, went to the airport, did the L10 meeting from the car, and now I'm here.
That's dedication right there.
So part of it is commitment. A lot of it is the amount of commitment that you have. However, here's some tips, right? So if you guys, I wrote a Facebook post about this. So the tips are this: when you have a full plate, these are the 5 things that you can do with these tasks, when it gets busy. So number 1, if it's not a deadline-oriented task, you can just move it. You can push it back. Push it back a day, push it back 2 days, push it back a week. If that's if it doesn't have a deadline. Or you could just delete it and just decide, it's not that important. I'm just going to take it off the list. I only have time for these. This one's actually not that important. I'll delete it. You can decide to work longer hours. We all know what that's like, right? We didn't get done. It has to get done, so I got to figure it out today and work long hours to jam it in. And that's basically what today was. I was just like, well, I got to get it done. All this is important. It's all deadline oriented, so that's what today's about. Or you could delegate. If you have somebody that you can delegate to that, you can delegate it with 80% proficiency, then delegate it off. Get it off your plate. Then it's removed. And then the last one is leveraging the tools and technology around you. I mean, we live, it's 2020. I mean, there's an app for everything, right? So there's a way to leverage your time to get things done more efficiently. So those are the 5 things that I utilize.
One more thing. You can cancel stupid things that you do daily, like spending too much on Facebook, watching videos. If you cancel some stupid stuff, sometimes you'll be more productive. How many guys out there that I don't have time for this, and you see them arguing for 30
time
minutes?
Wasters. Time wasters and distractions, dude. Yeah, video games are a big one. Social media is another one. Yeah, and I'm guilty of that.
We all are. But the thing is, when you get in the time crunch, I would rather spend less time on Facebook than cancel the gym.
Yeah. The other thing that's going to help too is develop a reason why. So why are you going to go to the gym? Are you going to do it just to work out and get big biceps? Because, if it's to look a certain way, that's not going to last very long. You're going to get super frustrated because you're not getting the results that you want fast enough, and you're just going to quit, right? So come up with a stronger reason why.
Can I give you guys a reason why? Your reason why, if your body is not your body, belongs to your wife. It pisses me off when I see beautiful wife and man with a huge bum here, and he will be picky about how she looks, and he does not care what he gives her. Your body is not your body; it's your wife's body, vice versa. So this is not mine. This is not for me.
Yeah. So for me, it's I want to mow my yard when I'm 80. I want to be in such shape, where I've taken care of myself, where I want to mow my yard when I'm 80 and also see my grandchildren have children.
Absolutely. And you want to play soccer with them. You don't want to, Jason Kalipa, one of the CrossFit Games early champions, whatever. So he said, one of the things with the CrossFit, so he won CrossFit Games for 2008, and he owns the gym, and he said, my kids will never have to worry about me, taking care of me, because he's fit.
Yeah.
And that's amazing. And, for me, I'm raising champions right now, and I work out with my kids, and it's awesome.
That's great, man.
I look at my dad, and I'm like, I'm trying to teach my dad at 60, deadlift and stuff, because he had lower back issues, they're not mobile. They're I don't want to be like my dad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I wanted my kids to be not only proud of me, but also not to take care of me.
Yeah, so, I hear you.
You talk a lot about leadership and culture, like a lot. It's like number one content that I see from you. It becomes also like a cliche. Recently, everybody talks about leadership. Everybody talks about culture. It's not sexy. Nobody wants to talk about it. But what's the culture and leadership for you? I know Roofing 101 is all about that.
Yeah, so first it starts off with like values and beliefs, so.
How do you do that? Like if I don't know nothing about it, how do you write it? Is there a book? Is there like something you whiteboard yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I explain it hey, listen, this is what we believe in. These are the values of the organization. This is our mission. This is our vision. These are the priorities and how we make decisions. I think it's important that you guys understand how we make decisions. So when you see things done, you understand. I think that's important. Another thing is we help our employees develop their own vision for their own life, personally and professionally. So, hey, what do you want to accomplish in your life? You're here for, I don't know, if we're lucky, 80 years, 85 years. So what do you want to accomplish in your life? What's the vision for your life personally? And so we help them create vision boards, and that's a very important part because then that helps people develop more of a sense of purpose and more of a vision as to why they're doing what they're doing. And essentially, they, at some point, they're going to move on and go work somewhere else, or they're going to start their own company or whatever it is, right? And so part of what I see our job is at Roofing 101 is to help cultivate, their sense of purpose. And that's super important.
Love it. What trends do you see in the roofing industry right now?
Trends do I see in the roofing industry? Well,
do you see trends towards franchises like yourself, consolidations?
No, I mean, I know that, let's see, trends that I see in the roofing industry.
What's changing?
Marketing. Yeah, marketing's changing. Labor's changing. Those are probably the two big ones.
How is marketing changing?
Well, it's becoming more digital.
How people finding?
How
but
people find you. But
you still door knocking mainly?
We still door knock, yeah, mainly. Yep. Which we were affected in California, but all the other markets we weren't as affected as much. Yep.
Do you see bigger companies rising, consuming smaller companies? Like I see like a lot of investors coming in the space, somewhat like Salt Lake City, California, like a lot of like smaller purchases, like bigger guys buying smaller guys. Do you see that on the
I've seen it. I've seen it more in the last year than I have in the last 5.
Would you take your company public? Is that the end goal?
I wouldn't say it's an end goal, but it's
one of the options.
It's one of the options that's on the table. I wouldn't.
How big is Roofing 101 today?
We have 70 some odd employees, and I think we're around 10 million right now. So we'll probably do, around 12 to 13 at the end of the year. We just started a commercial division, so.
How many? I know you license in a lot of states. In what states you're active?
The states that we're active, so we're active in Washington, Oregon, California, Arizona, Texas, Kansas, Missouri.
Like that's where you have offices and you actually
Yes, yep. And we are kind of active in Minnesota. See, the thing is I'm not like really into operations, so I'm really removed from operations. So I do know that we set up in Minneapolis. I do know that we are set up in Salt Lake City.
If you don't want to be crushed, stay out of Minnesota.
Yeah, there you go.
We don't need no more.
And I think we're licensed in every state west of the Mississippi, minus Colorado, Nevada, and New Mexico.
And what's the goal? You want to be in every state?
Every state. Every state minus Alaska.
Why?
And where it wouldn't make sense.
What's so different with Alaska?
Well, come on, dude. I mean, the production season's like, 30 days? 30-day production cycle? Yeah.
Who makes the best roofing product? Shingles.
Owens Corning right now.
Right now?
Yeah.
What else would you install?
We are looking at IKO, we are looking at GAF, and CertainTeed.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. The biggest issue that we're having right now is a matter of being able to get materials timely. So when that happens, it's like we have to look at options.
What do you see future of solar? Tesla on the rise, like there's a lot of interesting products there. Is solar going to be big?
Yeah, I mean, solar's not going away. It's going to continue to be big. I think it's something that roofers need to grasp and know how to work around. We're currently in the process of, we had a large solar division, at the beginning of the year, and then once, the shutdown happened, it basically shut down our entire solar division. And then we decided to go out and get our own electrical licenses, which we're still in the process of doing, taking the testing and all that, which takes a while. Electricity is not something to mess around with. So the idea is, what we want to do is we want to service, and do warranty repairs for solar companies, and then also install our own solar. And then, obviously when hailstorms go through areas where there's solar, I mean, we have our own licensed electricians. We can remove the panels, no problem. Because usually, like, how big of a pain in the butt is it when a storm comes through to get like Tesla or some of these other guys to come remove the panels?
Of course.
And then the other issue is, if you remove them, you can actually void the warranty and all that kind of stuff. So us being certified with those companies, we're going to be able to remove and reattach, no problem.
Give advice to a newer roofing business owner. Someone who just got licensed, about to recruit first couple guys working under him.
Get into traction. Read that book. Yeah, read that book. Understand what your vision is, mission, vision, values. Your belief structure, priorities, all that kind of stuff is very important to get on paper, because that drives the direction of the organization. The business is more than just a logo and a fancy slogan. Like there's something behind it. People want to work for more than money now. They want to work for a cause. So have a cause attached to your business. Don't leave it up to nonprofit organizations to be the ones that operate with a cause. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, we're for profit for a purpose. Like, have a cause. So.
Love it. Yep. Give advice to the homeowner who is about to replace the roof, interview contractors.
Yeah. Great question, man. Here's my advice. Ask them if they do layovers. One question will solve all kinds of problems. Why is that important, Dmitry?
So what if they say, if the company does layovers?
If the company does layovers, well, essentially when you do a layover, you avoid manufacturer warranties.
That's one.
Yeah.
Well, some will, like I think CertainTeed will let.
Yeah, they reserve the right to refuse to cover any manufacturing issues. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So they always manufacturers always have the choice.
We just lost like half of Canada, like out there. Like people just unsubscribe, dislike, move to the next.
Yeah, they're like, no.
Yeah, we're done
so
with this.
do you do layovers, and then ask them about ventilation. Ask them about the ventilation system. Not like leading questions like, well, do you install ventilation?
Yeah.
Ask them questions like, what kind of ventilation do you recommend? And then what are you going to do in my house? Because majority of homes out there are not ventilated properly. And so, every roof.
But majority of sales reps don't know nothing about it.
They don't know nothing about it, most of them, right? So you can test them by asking, what would you do on my house with ventilation? And, when I met with manufacturing reps, I asked them the question, what's the number one reason why you do not cover a warranty claim? And they all say improper ventilation.
Last question. Give advice to someone who's been in the industry for a long time, maybe 10, 15, 20 years plus, but never broke maybe $1 million, and see how this crazy world is changing and want to grow and maybe tired, don't know what to do else. You've been doing it for too long. I see a lot of guys out there.
Yeah.
They run $1 million operation. They see all these companies by youngsters all around them, and they just can't adjust. They still maybe do old school paperwork.
Yeah.
What advice would you give them if they want to change something so they have a little brighter future? Yeah.
So one, you're going to have to make some changes if you want to. the way technology is changing now, it's progressing at a faster rate than what it normally does, right? So because it's progressing faster, the change rate and the modifications you need to make in your business happens more often. So you just have to be willing to make those changes, whatever those might be, and without looking at the business, I wouldn't know what they are. But you have to be open to technology. You have to be open to the changes in marketing because consumer behavior changes. Like it all changes based on the environment, and we're dealing with a gnarly environment right now. And so consumer behavior is changing, which means marketing is going to change. The other thing that I would recommend is, consider either A, getting a coach, or B, bringing somebody in to help you make decisions. And yeah.
That's gold. A lot of guys, I know what I know. You can't teach me. I've been doing it 20 years, and it's crazy to me because, like, I just got a comment on the YouTube channel on what was it? The guy said we've been doing it for 6 years, and he was arguing with me about either gutter covers or something, like so fiercely. And like, if you've been doing it for so long, you should not have this argument. It's just like such a closed mind.
Yeah.
And it's like, and facts are facts, numbers are numbers. It's not my opinion. Go do study, go.
Yeah, be open-minded to possibility and the potential that there is something more and greater out there for you, than what you're currently doing, and being open-minded being open to possibility is very, very important in a business because things change and you have to be open to changing. You have to adapt.
Awesome. Yep. Graham, it's absolute pleasure. Guys, if you don't know who Graham is on Facebook, if you're not following him, follow this guy. He is a mystery to me. Like, I try to read people.
Yeah.
And I can't understand when you're smiling or where you're serious. You have that smile where
I'm seriously smiling.
No, honestly, he explains and he smiles, but he's not. He's serious. His content is gold. Follow him. You started doing a lot of more content this year.
Yeah.
I love that culture topics and building a business, everything behind.
And here's one thing. Here's one project that I just started last week. It's called Leaders Next Door, and it's all about, dude. It is all about building up like the next generation of young leaders, and the way we do that is through teaching kids between the ages of 7 and 14 how to make money in neighborhoods. Wow. Which is super important. Kids need to learn how to make money at a young age. You were just talking about that with your son.
My son is.
And then not only that, what do you do with the money when you make it? Yeah. So do you spend it, save it, or give it? And so we teach all that.
Just before I flew here, we sat down with our kids, and we have 5, and we're opening saving account to all of them because now every birthday. Grandparents give them $100, so that money literally sits somewhere. Like my 5-year-old Max has like $200 right now, and they're like, "Why do we need saving account? Why do we need?" Because you can't just have money laying around here. So we're teaching them open checking account. What are you gonna do with it? Awesome, man. Love your content. Keep up the good work.
Yeah, thanks, dude.
Thanks for coming.
You got it. Hey, I'm Graham. We created a program that teaches young kids how to make money in their neighborhood. Folks running around the neighborhood working hard to earn money. To get to your goal, you have to have discipline. That right there is the cherry on top. Business and starting a business, it's kind of like baseball. So when you play baseball and pull up the map and all that kind of stuff, here's why saving is important. You have a goal of $250. A gentleman that you wash his car and he's super particular about how his car looks. All right, coach. Your job is to make sure that the leader knows what a good job is.